Hey, what's up, you guys? It's me, Kevin, and I'm here looking at Final Fantasy 15. And I'm just going to run through a quick mission and a little bit of story. So if you do want to avoid spoilers, I would recommend not watching this video roughly in the 15-minute range. We're going to get to a kind of a bigger cutscene. But I'm still very early in the game. And this is kind of the first big departure from a lot of Final Fantasy games. This game has a lot of big departures. Is that it's a very open world game, and your main way of getting around is in this car called the Regalia that you can customize with cool paint colors and all kinds of fun stuff. You can change the colors of it in general. And yeah, we're just going to go into a quick story mission where we're going to take out an enemy soldier base, and I don't want to give away any spoilers. You're going to get a little bit of them here. Generally, the mood of this game is that you're with your three friends that you don't really actually get to know a lot about. That's kind of my one big irk with the game right now, is that they don't really set up your initial connections with these three other, your three homeboys that you're traveling this Final Fantasy world with. Another big irk I kind of have is that I feel like traveling with the car, if you're doing the auto drive, where this Ignis character will drive you around, will actually kind of leave you somewhat farther away from your objective than you would like to be. So we're just going to take a quick run over there right now, and I'm actually going to show you the combat real quick, and the combat is very different from other Final Fantasy games. It's an action RPG, much akin to something like Kingdom Hearts, for example. So I'm going to come in here and just start wrecking these giraffe creatures. You can block. I did not do it there. That was my bad. But if you look in the lower left, I actually have 3 different weapons. I have 4 slots, actually, that are mapped to your D-pad that I can switch to at any time during combat. And I can also have this ability to warp around and use this ability called the Warp Strike, which will get me to an enemy really quickly. But it will drain my MP or my mana. And if I'm drained of my mana, I'll go into this mode called Stasis, where I cannot do any warping. So that's no good. You want to be able to get around quickly. If you attack an enemy from the side or from the behind, you'll get what is called a blindside attack. And at certain times, you can actually link up with one of your 3 friends to perform essentially a combination move with them, and you'll deal extra damage. Experience is rewarded at the end of each battle. However, how you level up is different than other Final Fantasy games. First, we're just going to look at a quick look at the menu here. So the Noctis character, which is the main character you control, can equip any weapon into one of those 4 slots, while your other characters are only able to equip 2 weapons, and they can only do certain weapons in their primary and certain weapons in their secondary. So that's kind of what mixes it up. That is Gladius, I think is his name, and he's a cool character. Actually, the great thing about this game so far is that I really do like all the characters. They all have pretty good personality to them, and the way they interact with Noctis and the way they interact with each other feels really fluid. Sometimes the dialogue can sound a little too scripted, but you know, I don't think it's the worst thing ever. It's good for trying to sound like organic human dialogue between characters. I think they've done a really good job. Yeah, that guy's the tatted up cool one of the group, the strong one. Kind of seems like they're trying to model it after like a J-pop boy band, which they've done a very good job of. So yeah, it's an open world game too, which is crazy for Final Fantasy. I mean, they've all been kind of open world, but never to this extent. Just traveling around this world, you'll find side quests and side missions, which has helped me to really over-level myself for the story quests, which is something I love to do, because I never feel like I never like feeling like I'm too weak for a story quest, so I just go above and beyond and over-level myself. So I'm actually like 2 times the level I should be for the story quest, but I've spent like 6 hours in this beginner area. This is Kor. He is the guard for your father, who is the king. So that's kind of, this isn't a spoiler, whatever. This is in all the trailers. You're the prince of this kingdom. And that's maybe my first big real disconnect with this game, is that even though you're the prince of this kingdom, random passerbys don't really give a shit. Like, they're pretty impartial about you being literal royalty of this huge kingdom. These are bad dudes. I have a great sword. We're gonna kind of wreck these guys. They're only level 3, and I think at this point I'm level 14. another thing I like about this game is actually the design of the enemies and the characters. I think it all looks really good. At some point you'll see a mech that looks a lot like the mechs from Metal Gear Solid. That is not a bad thing. I think it's a weird take, but I'm not complaining. So yeah, we're going through this little mini dungeon right now. Actually, there are full-length dungeons in this game, and I kind of got caught by one early on. It was a dungeon that had like level 3 or level 4 goblins in it, and I was doing pretty well. It was a mine shaft. And then I went down this one corridor, and there was a level 52 samurai ghost, and he pretty much one-hit killed me. So that was odd. But yeah, they're just dungeons spread around the game, and as well as story-specific dungeons. I went through one right before this. Yeah, and actually, maybe one of my biggest gripes, I don't know, I have a few gripes about the combat. You know, I'm kind of the purist who really loved the turn-based Final Fantasy RPG combat, so it was kind of rough for me to get into this. I mean, I do like action RPGs, and, you know, I think they do it well. It's a little button mashy for my taste. I kind of feel like I've lost a lot of the strategy that kind of comes into a Final Fantasy game with the turn-based combat. But the hits feel good, and with the Warp Strike, it actually adds a good amount of maneuverability to the game. But maybe my biggest problem is the blocking and parrying system. I don't know why, but I feel like I do it and I hit the button, and then it kind of doesn't register. I think it might be because I am currently like attacking and using a weapon, but yeah, I don't know. It's my only and biggest gripe with the game, with the combat so far. I like what else they've done with it, though. I think being able to switch weapons mid-combat feels good, and that's kind of where they do revive some of the tactics and strategy, is that some of the enemies are weaker to certain weapons or elemental abilities. So it makes you have to think on your feet. I get lost here for a second. I go back the way I came, which is easy to do when... Another kind of small gripe I have about this game is that I'm playing on the PlayStation 4, but the textures just kind of look muddy, and I mean, that makes sense for an open world game just because they have to have so many textures spread across such a large map. But yeah, I don't know, it's kind of bummed me out. I was looking at like a mountain range, and I don't know, it just kind of all looked like shit. You know, it just kind of looked like one brown smudge. Which again is kind of weird to see from a Final Fantasy game, because normally these are all just so polished. You know, and it's kind of crazy because you get a lot of open world jank in this game where, like, I saw through my character's face. You know, one of my characters clipped through my car. It was just really weird to see in a Final Fantasy game when, again, things should be really polished because, you know, originally or normally Final Fantasy games have been pretty linear games. So here's a bit of story. This guy is not nice. I'm gonna bet he's a recurring character, but hey, I don't know. I like the look of the characters, just in general. I think their general aesthetic that they've got is pretty good. They kind of have rounder faces, which I know is a weird thing to say, but it reminds me a lot more of Kingdom Hearts, with their more rounder, cartoony faces. Bigger, kind of more Americanized eyes is something else you'll see. So this is the mech that reminded me a lot of Metal Gear Solid. It kind of looks like a Metal Gear Solid mech, doesn't it? I don't know. Maybe it's just me. My strategy for this fight was to take out the smaller dudes and then go for the bigger guy. And pretty soon here, we'll see different uses of the Warp Strike. And this is crazy, right? Like, I'm avoiding this dude's attacks by dodging. That's just something you would never see in a Final Fantasy game. And I mean, hey, I'm always for change. I think that the old combat system, I don't know, didn't have legs anymore. They did it for 14 games or whatever. So the Warp Strike can actually target on larger enemies. It can target specific points. But here I'm actually using a partner ability. So you see the green bar on the left-hand side of the screen. Once that fills up to a certain amount, I can use my partner's specific abilities where they essentially just deal a lot of damage. So there I actually Warp Strike to a specific spot on the enemy and broke one of its limbs. Again, I think this is great because it kind of reinstates some of the strategy that was lost once they made the switch from a real-time action RPG from a turn-based action RPG. So that's good. Items are still pretty much the same, and it will actually pause combat when you're using an item, which is great because the combat does get pretty hectic, especially when you have multiple, like a lot of enemies on screen. Sometimes you'll have like 10 different goblins attacking you all at once. Yeah, and this guy's gonna go down pretty quick. Another thing about this fight is I have like a level, I don't know, a really high level dude helping me out named Core, my father's guard. And yeah, so we took pretty good care of that guy.
Impressive. Seeing you in action puts my mind at ease. It's clear I don't need to.
He's kind of been watching over me.
I'll return to watching.
My character is angsty.
Till next
What
time.
a surprise.
Take care.
He's moody, you know. He's got the full-blown anime hair. This game is very anime, which is something I am definitely okay with. It's what I want out of my Final Fantasy games. Got a sick trophy. So yeah, I think this was actually the end of kind of the introduction of the game, which is great because I put like 5 hours into it. Something I didn't like that they actually did early on is you're supposed to take a boat, and when you kind of get to that point, it's like, hey, you know, do everything in this area because you might not be able to come back here for a long time. So I got really freaked out about that, so I started doing a ton of side quests and like really leveling myself up and trying to milk everything I could out of the area. And then I go to the boat and I say like, all right, let's move on to this next area, and then it pretty much just goes like, nah, just kidding, you're going to be in this area for a lot longer and you can come back here whenever you want. So it kind of freaked me out unnecessarily. By the way, that's how your experience goes. Whenever you kind of amass experience, and then once you hit a campsite or a motel, literally a motel, this is such a weird game, but you'll stay in like motels or trailers, and your characters essentially go to sleep, they rest, and that's when the experience will actually go into your levels, and you'll start leveling up. This is another thing I really like is the one of your characters, Prompto, will just take pictures that you can save, and they're all from like his perspective, and there's actually a lot of really cool pictures that I guess are just saved to your hard drive, so I'll probably never do anything with them, but I don't know, I think it's a cool feature. Now we're gonna load. The loads are long, but they are not they are far and few between, so that makes it so much better. Yeah, so I'm on the 3rd chapter right now out of I don't know how many. The first 2 were good though. The story quests I actually do enjoy a lot. I think they're pretty well paced, and I think the story overall is pretty well done. It is a very kind of, they don't really stray away from the Final Fantasy formula of a story, which is 4 people have to go save their world, what is defined as their world, whether it's a nation or a town. Most of the time it's the world though. There's a girl who has a huge responsibility, and some people want to kill her. You have to save her as well. Your main character may or may not have a romantic interest in that main girl. You know, it's a Final Fantasy story, but I don't know. These games are so far and few between now that I'm pretty much okay with that.
The prince eludes death.
So now we're gonna get a little more story. This is maybe where I would say if you don't want to see too much storyline stuff, maybe you can just stop watching here. But
Find and kill her.
yeah, and I think the kind of enemy faction and the enemy faction's armor looks cool. It is a good looking game, even though the textures can be muddy. I think the character models and the character design looks really good. Oh man. A weird thing is actually the voice acting. I think a lot of it's done pretty well, except some characters are real, like American stereotypes. And what I mean by that is, for example, Sid's daughter, I think her name is Cindy or something. She is very Western, to a point where I felt a little offended. Not really, but it was a very kind of, I guess maybe what the Japanese think of as a really Western accent, because man, they go pretty hard. There's also like a reporter who's obviously from like Brooklyn and has a hard Brooklyn accent. It's just kind of weird to see, especially from these character models that look, you know, Asian in a lot of senses. To have these really like hard Brooklyn accents just kind of threw me off.
Look out, world.
So that's some hot open world jank right there of my camera just clipping through that car. And yeah, so this is kind of a big transition for my game, moving from the initial area to this kind of wetland area. And yeah, I think a lot of the dialogue, again, between the characters is really well done. A lot of their interactions just feels good and natural. They all have good personalities, I think. But man, it really bums me out, though, that a lot of the game's backstory and a lot of the connections between these characters, I guess, are locked up in kind of the multimedia material you can watch. I know they have like a 5-part season that introduces you to each of the characters and how they know Noctis, which is the main character. And then there's also the Kingsglaive movie, which you have to pay for if you want to watch, that I guess shows more of the backstory and the warring between the nations. I don't know, it just... If you're coming into this game cold, like you don't know anything about this game, it just feels like poor storytelling, I guess. So this is kind of crazy, that this is a Final Fantasy game and I'm just in a gas station with a hot harmonica playing. And I can go into this mini-mart and buy whatever you buy in a mini-mart, high potions, actually. Which is pretty crazy. It's all pretty crazy. Iris is a character who is the sister of the big guy, Gladius.
Let me know when you're coming so we can meet up.
Yeah, will do.
You better.
Yeah, and you know, I'll hopefully have a review of this game. Man, I want to say next week. There's just so much to get through in this game. I mean, again, I just spent 6 hours in the starting zone.
What about me? She
So-
say anything about me?
Next week, hopefully, cross your fingers if you want to see a full review of this game.
Chocobos! Chocobos!
No time for that. Need to get to Lestalem.
It's still ages away.
But so far, I have pretty
Come on,
good
just a quick
first
visit.
impressions. I definitely want to kind of feel the combat out a bit more. The blocking and the parrying just feels a little weird, and it does feel a little button mashy, but maybe as the game progresses, it'll force you to strategize more and force you to play a bit more defensively. But for now, I mean, that's Final Fantasy 15. I like it so far. I think it's a cool game. I think it does a lot of really weird stuff with the Final Fantasy universe. I mean, I'm going into this mini-mart, into this normal-ass mini-mart to buy high potions and Phoenix Downs. Yeah, I think they do cool stuff with this game, and I'm excited to see what I move into. Maybe other systems will open up. Again, I don't even know how far into this game I am. I don't think very far, but yeah, I like what I see so far, and I like what I've played so far. But if you want to see a full review, tune into Kleo.org. Check out all of our stuff there. Check out the Pixel Power-Up on probably Tuesday or Wednesday when that goes up. And I might have even more impressions. So thanks for watching, you guys. If you like what you saw, like, subscribe, comment to the channel. And yeah, thanks for watching.